The latest episode of the Twitter Files is reported by Li Fang, who is from The Intercept. And Li Fang has a thread on Twitter, but he also has a longer article, which I have now in front of me, from The Intercept. And what is this describing? It's describing a concerted and somewhat covert effort by Big Pharma, by companies like Pfizer, like Moderna, to censor content on social media platforms that hurts their profits. I mean, this is almost shocking to say, because they're not censoring misinformation, as we'll learn in a minute. They're censoring legitimate debate, they're censoring information, and by the way, they are allowing misstatements and falsehoods by their own industry representatives to go unchecked, unexamined, uncensored. Those lies are, in fact, still up on social media right now. The story is a kind of a familiar one. So what we have here is you've got the pharmaceutical industry, and the pharmaceutical industry wants to work with these social media platforms, but they realize it might look kind of bad if they did this openly and blatantly. And so their lobbying group, they have a lobbying group and they operate through the lobbying group. The lobbying group is called BIO, B-I-O. And what does BIO do? BIO works with a kind of another operation that is a nonprofit called the Public Goods Project. So look at how this is all camouflaged. A lobbying group is giving money. In this case, it turns out $1,275,000 to this nonprofit. And the nonprofit communicates then with Meta, Facebook, with YouTube. It communicates with Twitter. So Twitter thinks, oh, we're dealing with this well-meaning nonprofits that's trying to censor misinformation. They don't realize what we're getting here is what the industry wants. Now, what does the industry want? First of all, it wants to shut down legitimate points of view that are disputing the vaccine. So they flagged a tweet, for example, from a senior Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT scientist named Stephanie Seneff. And she challenged the idea of vaccine passports. And she said that both vaccinated and unvaccinated people have, quote, roughly the same capacity to carry, shed, and transmit the virus. Now, by the way, this is an accurate statement. It's certainly a statement of legitimate debate. And by the way, it contrasts with false statements that were made by the CEO of Pfizer, who basically said that the vaccine was 100% effective in preventing COVID cases. We know now that that's not true, but it was suspected not to be true even at the time. I mean, from the very moment they started vaccinating people, there were people who were vaccinated who got COVID. So they knew right away that this is not a kind of preventive that's going to make sure you don't get COVID. Well, guess who gets suppressed? Or guess who the nonprofit here, which is the PGP, the Public Goods Project, taking money from Pfizer and Moderna, guess who they go after? They go after the MIT researcher who's telling the truth. And of course, they do not go after, no surprise, the Pfizer CEO, who is actually telling, well, if not lies, then certainly putting out misinformation, information that happens not to be true. There's another part of this that I found very striking and very revealing. In mid-September of 2020, a woman named Nina Morschenhauser, she's a lobbyist for Twitter in Europe, and she emails her colleagues basically saying that she's very troubled about a new trend. And the trend is that a lot of groups, a lot of public activist groups around the world are starting to demand that A, the vaccines be made available at a cheap cost worldwide, so that people in poorer countries can afford them. They can also get protection against the epidemic. And they make the point that if the formula for the vaccines was made available, then other people could produce generic versions of the vaccine more cheaply. And basically, this lobbyist for Twitter is like, we can't let this happen. Well, all right, I understand the desire of companies to protect their patents and their copyrights, but what's interesting is that a campaign now begins to try to censor the activists who are calling for low-cost vaccines or who are calling for vaccines to be made available more broadly. And so what happens is that Twitter is now approached to, quote, hide the tweets of activists that target the accounts of Pfizer and Moderna. In other words, the activists are obviously saying, let's pressure Pfizer, let's pressure Moderna, and Pfizer and Moderna want to dissipate this campaign. They want to undercut it. And so they're working now with the social media platforms to shut down these activists. They're particularly concerned about a hashtag called hashtag people's vaccine. They don't want this idea of a people's vaccine, the idea that it's kind of a human right, or the people have a right to get a vaccine. They want to shut this down right away. Why? Because they are making giant profits, huge profits on this vaccine. To give you an idea, Pfizer and BioNTech generate a staggering $37 billion in revenue from the mRNA vaccine in 2021 alone, making it one of the most lucrative drug products of all time. So we've seen censorship that is used to target political opponents. We've seen censorship that is deployed for all kinds of purposes. And here we have censorship deployed for a very simple purpose. You want to maximize your profits. And one of the ways you do that is shut down your critics.